Rain hadn't touched the dusty bones of Valentine in 3 long weeks, and the sky above it seemed to hang in place, colorless and silent, as if waiting for something to break the spell. Dirt and dust spiraled close to the ground, curling around boots and wagon wheels, as though the very land refused to look upon the scene unfolding outside the last day saloon. There, a makeshift scaffold had been built, hastily assembled from old boards and crates, barely able to support the weight of what it held, shame. By midday, townsfolk had begun to gather, not all out of curiosity. Some were there out of cruelty, others looking to spend coin with blank eyes and emptier souls. Atop the platform stood a gaunt man in a whiskey-soaked coat. Shuffling an old deck of cards like this too was just another bet. His name was Harland Creed, a man known for dragging misfortune behind him like a broken cart filled with IOUs and regrets. His smirk was all gambler's arrogance, his mustache twitching as he barked out prices for the girls beside him. 3 strong ones, one to cook, one to keep company, one to lull you to sleep if you're tired enough. To his right stood 3 girls, each shaped by a different sorrow. Molly, the eldest, stood tall, arms crossed, chin high, eyes sharp as flint. She wore her grief like armor. Next to her was June, all tense energy and clenched fists, jaw tight with unspent fury. The youngest, Mabel, stood slightly back, swaying gently, eyes unfocused, humming something no one else heard. Across the square, in the shadow of a wagon, a man watched them. Thomas Granger, known only distantly to most, was a quiet rancher from Pinewood, past Red Hollow. He rarely came to town except when the well ran dry, or a fence gave way to wind. With gray threading his beard and a tiredness in his broad shoulders, he sat with his 3 grown sons shifting uneasily behind him. He hadn't come for any auction, just salt, nails, and coffee. But fate has its own ideas, and it doesn't always knock. He watched Molly meet the crowd stares with a challenge in her gaze. No ring on her hand, no child by her side, no man standing for her, just sheer defiance wrapped in sorrow. June scowled at a man laughing too loud. Mabel blinked up at the sun, lips moving with her private song. Something about her reminded Thomas of his late wife's sister at that age, fragile in frame, but not in spirit. Then Harlan's voice cut through again, cruel and loud. Let's not pretend they'll stay untouched. Better get them now before the barkeeps do. $15 each or $40 for all 3. A stillness dropped like a hammer. No one moved. Even the breeze seemed to freeze. Then Thomas rose from his wagon and walked forward, slow and sure, boots stirring up dust as he passed men who suddenly seemed very interested in the sky. He didn't yell. Untie them, he said. Harlan squinted, unsure. What? Untie your daughters and step down before I put you there myself. The crowd shifted. Harlan blustered, spat, but something in Thomas's quiet glare made him back off. The girls stayed frozen until Thomas looked at Molly. You're free to leave, he said. But if you've nowhere to go, I've got a place. Roof doesn't leak. Sons keep to themselves. Soup's decent. No strings. Molly's eyes narrowed. Why? Because someone should have stopped him long ago. And I don't want anything in return. He turned, and the crowd opened around him like they remembered what fear felt like. Molly stepped down. June followed, jaw still tight. Mabel swayed to her own rhythm as they climbed into the wagon. The road out of town was lined with brittle trees and silence. Caleb, the youngest Granger boy, kept glancing back. Mark handed Mabel a wrapped sweet. She took it with a nod, like he'd handed her something sacred. The ranch was worn but clean. A yellow dog barked once and wagged its tail. As twilight stretched shadows across the yard, Thomas showed them each their rooms. Beds are made, he said. Windows shut. It ain't much. June scowled. Is this charity or a cage? Whichever you need it to be, he replied. That night he slept in the barn. The next morning, light poured through the kitchen window. Molly stood silently by the cold stove. June was already outside, kicking rocks. Mabel sat tapping a plate with a spoon like it was a drum. Thomas leaned in the doorway, sipping his coffee, Levi beside him. What now? Levi asked, not defiant, just bewildered. Let him breathe, Thomas said. Days trickled by. The girls remained quiet, helpful when asked, distant when left alone. Thomas never pushed. One evening, Molly sat on the porch, arms hugging her knees. and as the sun bled behind the hills, Thomas joined her. She broke the silence. "You've got no idea what he did to us." "No," he said. "And I don't need to." She studied him. "You can't fix people like us." "I'm not trying to fix you," he said. "Just giving you somewhere to rest." She looked down. "You think we're fit to be around your boys?" "I think you're fit to be anywhere you choose." After a long silence, she nodded. "We'll stay," she said quietly. "For now." Thomas stood, knees creaking. "That's enough." Behind them, fireflies lit up the yard. Mabel's soft humming drifted from inside. And somewhere near the barn, June let out a laugh, sharp and sudden, like a crack in something long frozen. Thomas looked out at the edge of night, wondering if it was a storm or a thaw rolling in. The house felt different the next morning. Not louder, not fuller, just changed. A quiet shift, like the breeze had turned. Thomas rose before the sun, same as ever, careful in his movements. When he turned, he found Molly already seated at the table, silent, holding a chipped mug with both hands as though anchoring herself with it. She hadn't poured the coffee yet. She waited for some sign of kindness, maybe even a word. He gave a small nod and poured 2 mugs of something hot. They drank in silence, a quiet agreement forming between them. Outside, the frost still clung to the fence posts, and the barn roof shone pale and brittle in the morning light. Thomas's boys were already busy. Levi splitting logs near the shed, Caleb brushing down the mare, and Mark once again struggling to fix the chicken coop door. Inside, the girls were slowly rising. June walked barefoot across the floor, shoulders wrapped in a quilt. She glanced at Thomas, said nothing, and settled beside Molly. Mabel came down last, still in yesterday's clothes, her hair a sleepy mess. She leaned against June, who blinked but didn't pull away. Thomas cleared his throat, voice low but steady. "You'll each have your own rooms. No locks, but no one will enter without knocking. If you need anything, just ask." Molly studied him. "What do you want from us?" He shook his head. "Nothing you don't want to give." "Then why?" "Told you. The house was empty. You needed one." The pause that followed wasn't cold, just long, the kind of silence that waits to be understood. Later, the girls explored the house. Molly picked the room with the east window. June took the smallest, maybe out of pride. Mabel chose the one with a child's drawing still tacked to the wall. A tree filled with stars. The plumbing worked sometimes, but the house was warm, clean, and calm. The girls didn't seem to know what to make of that. The boys stayed distant. Levi watched, always working, speaking little, as if carrying an invisible weight. Mark tried to be friendly but overcompensated, his laughs too quick, too eager. Caleb barely looked at anyone, not from shyness but from caution. He often stole looks at Molly, but looked away fast, like it hurt to meet her gaze. Molly noticed everything. She didn't trust easily. Walked the halls like she expected doors to lock behind her. She kept a knife under her pillow, not hidden, just there. That second evening, she sat near the fire and asked Thomas if he had ever been cruel. He didn't flinch. "No, ever weak?" His eyes stayed on the fire. "Yes." She nodded, accepting that. Meals were quiet. The girls cooked when they felt like it, and the boys washed dishes without being asked. The balance was uncertain, like a dance no one had been taught, but no one shouted, and no one struck. June clashed with Levi the first time they spoke. She'd left muddy boots in the hallway. He asked her plainly to move them. "You run this place like a church," she snapped. "No," he said. "But I built that floor. I'd like it to last." She didn't argue, but she did bring him extra kindling later, without a word. Mark once caught Mabel humming as she walked the fence line. He didn't interrupt, just followed, fixing the gate latch she'd passed. She glanced at him once, blinked, and kept humming. Bit by bit, the house began to breathe again. Thomas spent most evenings on the porch, carving birds from cedar. He used to do it for his wife. He never said so, but he didn't need to. On the 4th day, Molly found Caleb in the barn. He was moving hay, arms taut, movements sharp. He saw her and dropped the pitchfork. "Sorry," he mumbled, stepping back. "I'm not a snake," she said. "I know. You move quiet, that's all." "You're scared of me." "No," he said honestly. "I'm scared I'll say the wrong thing." "Then don't say anything." He nodded, And they stood like that, not speaking. She didn't mind. That night, Mark tried a joke at dinner about the mule being smarter than the three of them combined. June almost smiled. Mabel laughed, clear and bright, for the first time. Even Thomas let out a brief chuckle. Later, Molly passed him on the porch. "You never asked about our mother. Figured if you wanted to tell me you would." She nodded. "He sold her. A man in Kansas. We never saw her again." "I'm sorry. We stopped being sorry a long time ago." He handed her the bird he'd carved. A simple dove still unfinished. She took it, silent. Mabel found an old sewing kit and began stitching together scraps of fabric. June started braiding her hair again. Molly began waking early, not from habit, but because the quiet before sunrise felt like it belonged to her. One afternoon, June followed Levi to the well. "You always this serious?" "Mostly." "Why?" "Someone's got to be." She smiled faintly. "Maybe not anymore." He blinked. "Maybe not." The sky turned violet that night. Mabel sat by the window sewing, humming her tune. Mark carved a small flute from cane reed and offered it to her. She played one soft note and nodded. Thomas sat outside, watching dusk creep across the land. Molly joined him, arms crossed. "Think this'll work?" "I don't know what this is yet." She didn't smile, but she didn't leave either. That night, before the lamps dimmed, the girls gathered in Mabel's room. They didn't speak, just sat shoulder to shoulder, back to back. Three sisters in three rooms that no longer felt quite so empty. The stillness that followed wasn't empty, but full of breath. Something had begun to root itself, quietly, steadily. Spring arrived without fanfare. Snow melted slow down the hills. The creek swelled just enough to murmur. The fences held firm. Wind moved gently through the cottonwoods, whispering to buds not yet ready to bloom. Inside the Granger house, change came the same way, unspoken, slow, real. Just lives rearranging side by side. And Molly, broom in hand, beginning each day in the hush before the world stirred. From the back hallway to the front, she moved without needing permission, not out of obedience, but to claim even the smallest bit of control. June sat on the porch steps as dusk fell, sharpening knives with slow, purposeful motions, a ritual more than a precaution. Mabel had claimed the storage closet as her sanctuary, threading strings across the wall, stitching scraps of cloth into something unnamed. Thomas simply watched, understanding the quiet power in stillness and how healing doesn't rush. It treads gently. The boys had settled too. Levi patched the barn roof while Molly worked nearby in silence. Mark managed to draw laughter from June now and then. Caleb lingered near Mabel's door, just listening to her hum. Mid-April, the well went dry. Thomas found only grit in the bucket and looked toward the river half a mile off. By noon, a chain of family members had formed, hauling water in a steady rhythm. No complaints. Even small Mabel carried a tin pail as big as her spirit. That evening on the porch, Molly suggested they dig a new well. Thomas just raised an eyebrow. When she said she'd help, so did Levi. The next day, they began the grueling task, silence replacing words. The only sound the bite of shovels and strained breath. Molly worked beside Levi without pause, her hands blistering. Thomas brought bread and apples at noon. When Levi asked if she'd built anything before, she admitted to a collapsed shed. He called it a good start. That night, she soaked her hands in salt water. Caleb left a jar of ointment outside her door without a note. She used it. The next day, June asked Mark to show her how to saddle a horse. He stammered, but agreed. In the corral, June cursed the heat, the dust, the cinched strap, until she laughed, not carelessly but honestly. Mark smiled. She saw it and warned him not to get ideas, but didn't stop calling her ma'am. She didn't correct him either. Inside, Mabel took to cooking. Her first efforts were rough, but soon came tender eggs, tart pies, soft biscuits like memories. She hummed as she worked. Caleb found more excuses to help, bringing flour, splitting wood. "You don't have to," she told him. "I want to," he said, eyes averted. She handed him a spoon, told him to stir clockwise. No cheating. Evenings grew calm in a new way. Levi played the fiddle. Mark told meandering tales. June leaned on a post, quiet but at ease. Molly sat by Thomas, sharing silence. One night, She asked why he hadn't made them leave. You haven't tried, he answered. Would you stop us? She asked. No, then why care? After a pause, he said, too many good people get shut out. It's time someone held the door open. She nodded. Not many think like that. More should, he replied. In the barn, Caleb taught Mabel to twist rope. She did it wrong on purpose, laughing when he corrected her. You always this patient? She asked. Only with what matters, he said. She handed him the coil. The well took 6 days, shallow but enough. Molly and Levi shaped it layer by layer, like a promise. When the water came, Molly leaned on her shovel and grinned. Didn't think I'd stick around, she teased. Didn't think, just hoped, Levi replied. Hope's dangerous. So's giving up, he said. That night, they all shared dinner. No tension. No silence. Just warmth. June passed Mark the salt. Mabel set her fork down, quietly content. Thomas raised his glass to water, and they laughed. Even Molly smiled. Later, under dim porch lights, Molly and Levi stood by the still barren garden. She handed him a trowel. Plant something, she said. If it grows, it grows. If not, we try again. And he did. That night, the house exhaled at last. Peace took root, soft and slow. Life found rhythm. Chores at dawn, warm meals at dusk, smiles shared without fear. No one flinched when boots hit wood. Spring crept in, stitching warmth into the house like it belonged. Then the rider came. He arrived at sundown Tuesday, golden light behind him, wind sharp with warning. His horse snorted at the fence line. He didn't dismount. Thomas stepped outside, rag in hand, weaponless but wary. His son stood behind him. The girls clustered at the door. Molly's arm reached back, steadying Mabel. I'm here for what's mine, the man called. No reply. He removed his hat, spat into dirt. Harlan Creed. Longer hair now, streaked silver, eyes burned by sun and fury. His gun gleamed on his hip. Think I forgot, he shouted. Think you could just walk off with them? Thomas stepped down slow. They left you. They're not yours anymore. Harlan sneered. This ain't a court. No, Thomas said. It's a home. Mark moved closer to June. Caleb stepped in front of Mabel. Levi didn't budge, still but brimming with storm. Molly stepped up. We're not yours. We're not for sale. We're not leaving. Harlan scanned them, scoffing. You think this changes anything? Some meals and soft words don't fix what you are. No, Molly said. But they make us free. He laughed bitterly. You're leeches. Levi stepped forward. Say that again. You'll fight me over someone else's trash? Harlan sneered. Thomas stopped Levi with a raised hand. I'll ask once more. Leave. Harlan's hand hovered near his gun. You think I came alone? 2 riders appeared behind him, rough-looking, ready. They're here for justice, he growled. Tension froze everything. Then hoofbeats. A new rider from the opposite ridge. Dust trailed. The sheriff. He rode in hard, eyes sweeping the scene. Something I should know about? He asked. Harlan gestured wide. He stole my daughters. The sheriff turned to Molly. That true? No, she said. We left. He tried to sell us. Thomas offered safety, nothing else. I've got witnesses, Harlan snapped. And I've got bruises, June shot back. The sheriff sighed, dismounted slow. He looked tired of this kind of mess. You take them in, he asked Thomas. I opened the door, Thomas said. They walked in. You planning to marry them off? Make them property? Harlan jabbed. No one belongs to anyone here, Thomas replied. The sheriff turned to the girls. You want to stay? Molly nodded. Yes. Then I've got no cause to move him, the sheriff said. Harlan surged forward. You're siding with them? I'm siding with the law, the sheriff muttered. And the law don't see daughters as debt. But, Harlan began. Say one more word, the sheriff warned, and I'll haul you in for threats. And just like that, the standoff began to unravel. Harlan sneered and muttered something to his men, who stood their ground a moment longer, relying on pride alone. Then Harlan spat again, climbed onto his horse and said with a low growl, This ain't over. Thomas remained still. It ends here. They left, hooves echoing like slamming doors. The sheriff lingered, tipped his hat. You've got a tough thing here, Thomas. Don't let it slip. We won't, Thomas replied. Then the sheriff was gone, and silence settled in heavy and cold. Levi let out a breath. Mark looked like he might come apart. Caleb silently stepped inside. Molly turned to Thomas. You didn't have to do that. He met her gaze. Yes, I did. She looked as if she might say more, but didn't. That evening, with lanterns glowing and the dinner table full again, no one mentioned the man with the gun, or the law that arrived too late. Instead, they spoke of the well, planting, and the mayor's visit next week. Molly sat opposite Caleb. June passed cornbread to Mark. Levi topped off Mabel's cup without being asked. After supper, Thomas took to the porch, carving wood again. Molly joined him for the first time, her arms uncrossed. I thought I was done believing in men like you. You don't have to, he said. Just believe the door's still open. A breeze stirred in the fields, night birds started their song, and the stars came out. Witnesses to a quiet kind of battle. One fought not with bullets but with something more difficult, mercy. The days that followed settled over Granger Ranch like an old quilt, threadbare but warm. There were no grand events, none needed. The danger had passed, the past still there but muted now, like thunder seen on the far plains. Spring thickened the air with pollen and earth and the promise of life becoming. The girls slipped into their routines not by command but rhythm. The boys no longer hovered, just walked beside them, shoulder to shoulder, not as heroes or owners, but as men who finally knew how to see. Thomas lingered more on the porch. Not because he lacked strength, but because there was something to see again, something growing. That porch became a kind of stage, where trust unfolded slowly. Molly took to the garden, hatless under the sun, not flinching when it burned. She planted without words, with purpose and care. Caleb came by often, silent but present, bringing her linen-wrapped seeds, weathered books and once, a purple ribbon. She nodded when she took it. That said enough. Levi kept fixing the chicken coop. June called it obsession. He said the hinges were stubborn. She rolled her eyes but never wandered far, always with a foot turned toward him. One evening, she caught him watching as she combed Mabel's hair. You look at me like I'm fragile, she said. No, he replied. I look at you like you survived. She didn't argue. Mabel was different altogether. She sang now, to the wind, the well, and the bread she needed before dawn. She rode bareback behind the barn, hair flying, her old mare understanding her spirit. Mark made her a harp of willow and thread. She played it wrong, but always joyfully. They didn't call themselves family, not yet. The word still carried too much. But something deeper had taken root. Roots don't wait for permission. It was Molly who first raised the idea. She did it as she did most things, with both tenderness and fire. One evening after supper, arms folded on the porch, sky lavender behind her, she spoke. Thomas was lighting his pipe. Levi was at the door hinges. The girls were inside laughing. We've been here for months, she said. Thomas looked up. And we're not leaving. That's the truth. I know. She inhaled. We want to talk. All of us. He rose slowly. The boys followed. The six sat again at the table, no food this time, just steady hands and eyes. June spoke first, bold as always. I want to marry Levi. Not because he saved me or I owe him, but because he sees me whole. Levi's fingers twitched, swallowing hard. Thomas nodded, simple and sure. Mark cleared his throat. I'd like to ask Mabel. She's young, Thomas said. Then I'll wait, Mark replied. Mabel smiled. I don't want him to. Thomas asked, You sure? Yes. He quiets the world. Then Molly reached for Caleb's hand. I thought love had to be earned with pain. Caleb never asked anything of me. Just let me be. Caleb blushed. She already is everything. Thomas leaned back, looking at his sons and the girls who once seemed like ghosts. He thought of his late wife, her voice in the wind, her silence in the garden. You don't need my permission, he said. But you have my blessing. They married under the cottonwoods. The town came, not out of kindness but curiosity. The same ones who'd watched them sold now stood with pies and handshakes. The ceremony was plain. No lace, no silver rings. Dresses sewn by Molly and Mabel. June wore boots. Mabel had wildflowers in her hair. The boys wore old baptism coats, brushed clean. Thomas stood not as preacher but witness. His voice was rough but steady. You've seen each other at your worst. That means more than any fancy vow. If you can love through dust, you can love through anything. The promises were simple. June vowed never to mistake silence for weakness. Levi vowed to speak only with meaning. Mabel, to laugh even when things felt heavy. Mark, to stay, even when restlessness called. Molly promised truth. Caleb promised not to hide from it. Their kisses weren't new. They were a continuation. A door now marked with names. That night the ranch glowed. Lanterns in trees. Fiddle music in the air. Mabel danced barefoot, harp under her arm. June challenged Levi to a race. Molly stood under stars, Caleb beside her, his hand light on her back. Not to claim but to say, I'm here. Thomas sat on the porch, pipe in one hand, mug in the other, watching. Sons. Daughters. A land that had once outlived joy. Mark sat beside him. You did good, he said. I just opened the door. Sometimes that's enough. They sat, listening to crickets and laughter flowing from the house like warm smoke. The grief on Thomas's face felt softened. The air smelled like bread and something new. Molly came out alone, carrying something in cloth. She handed it to Thomas. He opened it slowly, a carved cedar dove, now painted white, wings etched with flowers. We wanted you to have it, she said. You kept us alive. And gave us a place. He traced its wing. You gave me something too. She waited. A reason to finish what I started. She sat beside him. They watched the lanterns sway. The others joined, Mabel plucking her harp, June with leftover pie, Caleb asleep on the step, Levi dozing, Mark humming. No one said the word home. They didn't need to. It was in every breath, every vow, every gentle gesture. The wind softened, like the land itself had finally let go of the past. Here they were, not bought, not broken, but blooming together. Under a sky too vast for words, peace settled in at last.